All right, everyone. So we are only 5 days away from Election Day. We only have 3 more days left of early in-person voting in Virginia and New Jersey. So we're going to look into the New Jersey and Virginia numbers. Are we starting to get into landslide territory? Maybe. We'll see about that. I'll give you the numbers. You can decide because honestly, what is considered a landslide? Is it 10%, 12%, 15%, 8%? I mean, it can be anything. So you can go ahead and decide, put that down in the comments below. But I'll give you the data of what's happening right now in both New Jersey and Virginia. Okay, go ahead and give you the nowcast model as well. If you want to know more about how the nowcast model works, go into my previous video that I did. I explain it a lot there. I just can't be explaining it with every single video. Now, a few things before we start. First, I have a lot of trucks driving by, so you might hear them belching every now and then as I'm doing my video. Hopefully it's not going to be too loud. Second thing is Blue Jays, 1 win away from the World Series, 2 games in Toronto. They just got to win 1. And third, I'm going to be doing a live stream on election night of the election. If you go to my live stream tab on my homepage here at YouTube, you'll see the link for that. So go ahead and save that or whatever. I'll be going over the numbers throughout the evening. Let's go ahead and delve into the New Jersey numbers first. So remember, when we look at a lot of these numbers in New Jersey and compare them to 2024, the reason I'm comparing them to 2024 is because I don't have all the data for 2021. When we are comparing these, you have to remember that the Democrats won in 2024. So with the Democrats, and you'll see they're outperforming their 2024 totals, means that they're going to do better this time than they did in 2021. Okay, and 2024 as well. So let's go ahead and look at overall ballots that have been submitted so far, both in-person early voting and vote by mail. So as you can see, the composition right now is 53.4% of all the ballots cast so far have been Democratic ballots, whereas 28.5% are Republican and 18.1% are either unaffiliated or minor parties. Now, before we continue, I do want to mention one thing, because I know people will say this because they've seen some people on Twitter in the past. I don't know, I'm not on Twitter anymore. They'll see people in the past saying, oh, vote choice and vote choice and I was going to say partisan identification, but vote choice and voter registration by party are not the same thing. They're not, but they're damn close to being so. There are some states where you don't see this, but my nowcast model and all that accounts for shifts in that, which is the reason why my Florida models have been spot on accurate year after year after year. But it's a pretty damn good indication of what we should be expecting. Okay, so let's go ahead and go into mail-in ballots. And as I mentioned, we're going to compare it to 2024. So as you can see right now, the composition of the mail-in ballots in New Jersey, 62.4% of those who have voted with mail-in ballots have been Democrats, whereas in 2024, here we go, 57.9% were Democrats. So you do see the Democrats performing quite a bit better with that mail-in ballots. So that's going to give them a little bit of a cushion compared to what they had in the presidential race in 2024 as far as percentages. And remember, one thing to remember about this, you might be saying, Dave, why are you looking at 2024? That's a presidential election year. We're not looking at raw numbers. We're not looking at these ballots, the ballots accepted. We're not looking at the raw in-person voting numbers. We're looking at the percentage. We're looking at the composition and saying, is that composition the same? Because we're only going to have about 40% turnout in New Jersey. So we can see the Republicans are at 21% as far as mail-in ballots, where they were at 20.3%. So they're not doing as well as the Democrats when it comes to mail-in ballots. So that means that the Democrats, compared to 2024, have built this cushion. Now, when it comes to early ballots in New Jersey, this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. The Democrats are up by 1.9%. This has been going kind of back and forth a little bit over the last few days. It's been hovering around this 2% range in the difference between these. Now, let's go back to 2024 and see what the early in-person composition was. As you can see, 35.7% of those who cast their ballots in 2024 were Democrats, while 34.2% were Republicans. This means that the Democrats had a 1.5% advantage when it came to early in-person voting. You also see, and this will be interesting, 30% of the ballots being cast by unaffiliated voters or minor party voters. Now, if we go to what we have right now, 40.9% of those who have submitted their ballots in New Jersey are Democrats in person voting, 39% Republicans, and only 20% are unaffiliated and minor party voters. You will, and this is what happens if you have midterm elections and off-year elections, which is what we call right now. The independents and unaffiliated voters and minor party voters, they just show up a lot less. So then that's going to be distributed, and the major party composition is going to be higher. So a lot of people might be saying, God, that number has gone down. Always goes down. Goes down to every election, every state. It's just how it is. But the Republicans have not been able to close this. And as I've mentioned in other videos, to me, one of the prerequisites for Republicans to win this election in New Jersey, they have to win early in-person voting. They especially with this number that we're seeing now with the Democrats and in mail-in voting and the cushion they're building, they're going to have to win early in-person voting. What I mean by win is they have to have more Republicans vote than Democrats vote. So they still might win it, but they still have to have more registered Republicans vote than registered Democrats. If that doesn't happen, they don't win. So we'll see Monday when I do my video. If this number stays the same right here, where the Democrats are ahead of the Republicans in early ballots, in-person ballots, Republicans aren't going to win because you're now kind of at a status quo with what you had in 2024. And therefore, that's not enough of a composition to win. Maybe they can make it up on election day. I don't know. Anything can happen on election day. Hey, listen, I listened to some people on election day in 2024 that made me question my data that I had. And you got all the cannibalism and all that stuff. And I'll just have to say to myself, lesson learned, Dave. Don't listen to other people. Just stick with what your gut says and what your data says, and don't listen to other people. And that's why during this whole entire process, I have not looked at any data. I have not looked at anyone's analysis or whatever whatsoever. I have just stuck to mine, because if I would have done that shit in 2024, my videos would have looked a lot different. But I kept on getting little birds in my ears telling me, oh, no, that can't be the case. Lesson learned, lesson learned. Anyway, let's go over to the New Jersey nowcast model. And right now, and I mentioned a nowcast model in previous videos, so just go back and look at those. And remember, these nowcast models are a generic Democrat versus a generic Republican. Doesn't account for actual campaigns. We can see that the turnout rate right now is at 13.94%. And we're probably at about 40% of the vote we expect. We're only expecting about a 40% turnout in this election. But if the election were to end right now, the Democrats would be at 63.4% to the Republicans 36.6%. Of course, as I mentioned, we're going to have election day results, and those are going to be much more Republican and actually make this closer. As I mentioned in a previous video, I did say that I was able to get some data from a lot of the counties, but not all the counties. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare the pre-election day polling from 2024 and the composition of that, what the results were, to what the nowcast model is saying in those same counties, excluding the 5 that you see in the graphic here. Now, again, I'm only excluding those 5 because I don't have the data. Otherwise, I would have included those. But if you look at all the New Jersey counties, excluding these 5, if we look at in-person early voting and vote by mail, Kamala Harris had 58.8% to Donald Trump's 41.2%. And this is just major party votes. So this doesn't include minor parties and independent candidates. The nowcast model shows these same counties at 64.4% for the Democrats and 35.6% for the Republicans. And in this case, if the nowcast model is showing that much of a gap, it's looking really good for the Democrats. We'll know on Monday how close this gets. In order for the Republicans to win New Jersey, they need to get the Democrats under that 58.8%. They really need to get them to about 55, 54%. Again, that's if the election day vote isn't strongly Republican, but that could change. We don't know. I do feel, based on historical data, it's starting to look worse and worse for the Republicans now. Now, if we go ahead and look at model accuracy, when we look at New Jersey, you can see here that the model, the R-square model, and I talk about accuracy in my other videos, is at 0.887. So it's getting quite better. I'd like that number to be around 0.95 to be totally confident, but it is getting better as we get more in-person early voting. Now, I do want to show you something with this graph right here that might make it a little bit easier for you to understand, because you see some counties all in different areas. The counties below the line are basically overperforming, and the ones above the line are underperforming. So what this geographical accuracy does is it says, hey, here's the composition of the vote in these counties. So, for example, we can see Camden there. We can see that in 2021, Camden's votes, all of the votes cast, were 6% of the votes cast in New Jersey. As of right now, it's 8%. So that means that right now Camden has a 2% advantage compared to what they had in 2021. Now, if we look at Bergen County, we can see it's the opposite. We can see they were about 11% of 2021 composition, but are only at about 9% right now. And we have these counties kind of bouncing each other out. If you're looking at this, this actually bodes well for the Democrats. But the model is getting more and more accurate. That being the case, let's go over to Virginia. Now, in Virginia, we don't register by party. You just register to vote. Now, you'll see some things that say party registration. That's a lie. Anything that tells you that people are registered by party in Virginia, that's just a flat out lie, and they're trying to deceive you. This is the reason why on Vote Hub, and thank you very much, Vote Hub, you have New Jersey broken down by party, but you have Virginia just broken down by all ballots. So you can see 61.8% of the ballots have been returned, and 1,147,229 ballots have been submitted in Virginia. So that's really, really good. In previous videos, and I'm going to mention it again, in Virginia, we're seeing the opposite of what happened in the 2024 Georgia election. The reason I bring up Georgia is because its composition is very similar to Virginia, which is that you have a lot of counties. You have very big Democratic counties, and the rural counties are more Republican. In Georgia, in 2024, a lot of those rural counties and bigger Republican counties voted a lot and voted heavy in early in-person voting and actually vote by mail. The Democratic counties, DeKalb, Fulton, Henry, Gwinnett, and stuff like that, they couldn't push up. They just didn't have enough people turning out to vote. Now you're seeing counties like Fairfax and others just dominating early voting, and that trend is not going down whatsoever. So this is why I'm saying I'm comparing it to Georgia, because what we saw in Georgia, just the big Democratic counties staying absolute stagnant and not moving at all. But in Virginia, we're just seeing those Democratic counties now turning up more and more and more. And the Republican counties actually have really good turnouts, which is even better news if you're the Democrats. Now, let's go ahead and go to the Nowcast model. If you remember in a previous video, I said, if the Democratic Nowcast model has the Democrats at 67% or above, I believe it's going to be a double-digit election. So let's go ahead and look at that. And right now, if the election were to end right now, we have 18.16% turnout. We're probably going to get around 50% turnout in this race. Democrats would win 66% to the Republicans 34%. Again, this is a Nowcast model based on historical results, and if the vote ended right now, based on geographical distribution of the votes. Now, if we go ahead and look at the accuracy, we can see it's a little harder to read this because we have way more counties, and Fairfax is such an outlier. But Fairfax is actually underperforming. So if it's underperforming and it's going to eventually catch up to its regular performance rate, that's even better for Democrats. We see the model is at 0.9. Let's see, 9823. That number I have on there is so small. Sorry about that. So it is a very accurate model. So the Democrats look to be in really good positions in both Virginia and New Jersey. If the in both of these models, the Republicans haven't been able to chip back. In the presidential race, what we saw were the Republicans just have this massive in-person early voting that the Democrats couldn't catch up with. We saw that here in Virginia at first, but the Democrats were able to catch up and surpass them. Now, one of the people on my videos said, Dave, we know these are Democratic states. So why are we talking about it? Well, first of all, Glenn Youngkin is a Republican governor, current incumbent Republican governor of Virginia. So I don't know if you could call that a Democratic state. But second of all, it is about the margins. And I think the person who made that comment talked about this. It is about the margins. It's looking at the 2021 margins and seeing how those are going to play out in 2025. We've come to a point where the Democrats are winning special elections. Okay, how many Republican advantage special elections are we seeing? We're not seeing any. We really aren't seeing any. We're seeing the Democrats dominate in all these types of elections, special elections and all that. This is the first regular general election that we have. If all of a sudden we're seeing Democrats perform well in these elections, well then it looks good for the Democrats. But you determine, with the Democrats outperforming what they did in previous elections in both of these states, do you think we're in for a landslide? And again, what is a landslide, right? Is that 10%, 15%, 20%? Is it 8%? Does it depend on state? Of course it depends on state. I'm thinking right now, and this is just my guess again, learn my lesson, don't listen to others. My guess, this is not my prediction, just my guess, because I can't make a prediction because I don't know what election day is going to do. So, except in Florida, that's the only place where I can make a prediction when the polls close. They provide election day statistics. Besides Florida, I can't do that. I can only guess and make the best guess. As of right now, my guess would be that the Republicans cannot make this up on election day. They just cannot. And my guess is, as of right now, both of these elections are headed toward double-digit victories for the Democrats. We'll see. We'll see. Well, thank you all very much for joining me. I'll see you in the next video, which is tomorrow. I'll try to do one every day. I didn't do one yesterday because, yeah, it changed, but I just didn't feel like doing one. All right. See you all later. Have a good one. Bye-bye.